Hey everybody, welcome to Computer Science A. I'm Jill Westerland.
And I am Rob Schultz, and we'd like to welcome you back. Happy Monday. I would say good afternoon, but looking at our map, we've got students from a lot of different time zones. So it might be morning where you are, it might be early morning, it might be evening, it might be who knows. So welcome wherever you happen to be, and we are happy to welcome you to our community of Computer Science A exam viewers. As we get into things, we wanted to kind of take a couple minutes and review some of the announcements that were made by College Board about specifically the AP Computer Science A exam for 2020. For those that were not with us on Friday, we'll give you kind of a brief overview of some of the things we learned. For starters, the exam is going to be formatted as a 45-minute online free response exam that's designed to be taken at home. Okay, it'll be 2 questions. Question 1 will deal specifically with arrays and array lists. So you will be required to write program code to satisfy method specifications using some of the things from earlier in the course exam description, expressions, conditional statements, loops. And then also we want to make sure that you're able to traverse and manipulate elements in a 1D array or an array list. That'll count as 65% of your exam grade. And then question 2 will be the methods and control structures question. So with that one, you'll be instantiating objects from a class and calling methods, and then again, writing code that will take advantage of expressions and again, conditional statements and looping statements. And I want to specifically point out that down at the bottom, each question has been modified a little bit to include an open-ended question part. And that one's kind of the wild card this year. At this point, we're not really sure what to expect from that. So keep in mind that both questions will have that open-ended question part where you'll be asked to answer some sort of a question. We'll share more as we learn more and as we do some practice. Our exam date and time is May 15th Eastern time, 4 p.m. Now, I know in the past things have been kind of staggered, but College Board this year is requiring that all AP Computer Science A students take the exam at the same time. So as you look at the screen, depending on what time zone you are in within the United States, that's your time. Knowing that we have some international students as well, unfortunately, I believe it's Uma that's in India.
Yes.
Uma, we did a little checking, and we think 4 p.m. Eastern time is 1 o'clock in the morning your time. So make
the next
sure.
day.
Oh, the next day,
That's
1
right.
o'clock in the morning on the 16th.
That's
so,
right.
Everyone will be taking them at the same time, regardless of where you are in the world and what time zone you're in. From a timing standpoint, the first question, you will have 25 minutes to read and respond to that question. And then at the end of the 25 minutes, and no sooner, you'll have a 5-minute block that you can upload your response. So even if you finish question 1 in 10 minutes, you still have to wait the 25 minutes to upload your response. At the end of the 5-minute block of time to upload your response, you'll have 15 minutes to answer question 2. And at the end of that 15-minute block, there will be another 5-minute block for you to upload your response. And also keep in mind that you can't go back. Once you've completed question 1 and submitted it, you move on to question 2. There's no going back to question 1 again. Some other course specific information. We have been told that it's open note, open book. You are welcome to use an IDE or a compiler, but you are not required to. And College Board has stated that there isn't really an advantage one way or the other to using an IDE or a compiler. So if you prefer to write your code by hand and snap a picture, great. If you prefer to type, I know that my students, I'm notorious with my students as having horrible handwriting. So they prefer that I type things just so that my students find what I give them easier to read. So if you prefer to type, great. If typing will slow you down because maybe you're not the fastest typist, then you're going to want to actually write. And we'll, again, do plenty of practice between now and then. As far as test security, College Board has stated that they have multiple levels of plagiarism detection and security tools in place. So if by some chance you're looking at this as an opportunity to be sneaky and take advantage of the situation, please don't do that. You will most likely be caught, and College Board has said that they plan to, I can't remember the exact wording they used, but they will not take it lightly if they catch you cheating. I'll just leave it that way. So make sure you're doing this the right way. I mean, prep for the questions, take care of the questions, submit appropriate answers to the question. Don't try and look for a loophole to beat the system, okay? Can you back up one slide? There was one thing on there I missed. If by some chance you aren't available on May 15th, there is a makeup date available, and that's June 3rd. The exam would be Eastern time, 2 p.m. And Mrs. Westerland included a couple of things down in the bottom corner, some task verbs that are used for the free response questions, things like assume, that you can suppose that certain cases are true without having to prove them, complete, as in complete program code, and implement or write program code. So so that's basically the information we have about the exams at this point. Hopefully by now all of you have gotten an email, or your teachers have gotten an email with all of the specific details if you have questions beyond that. So looking at what's coming up this week, this is Array Week. You know, I feel like we're on the channel that does Shark Week. This is Array Week. So our focus today is going to be creating and accessing elements in arrays, creating arrays and then accessing elements. Mrs. Westerland's going to walk us through that today. Tomorrow, I'm going to take us through traversing arrays. On Wednesday, the two of us are going to kind of tag team, and we'll look at enhanced for loop for arrays and the difference between a regular for loop and the enhanced for loop. Thursday, Mrs. Westerland will take us through developing algorithms using arrays, and then I'll pick up and I'll do some further algorithm development using arrays on Friday. So that's our schedule for the week. And you can also see that we are going to specifically be focused on review and exam prep. So 4 of the 5 days this week, we're going to be looking at past free response questions. And on Wednesday, Mrs. Westerland's going to kind of focus on Unit 6, learning objectives and essential knowledge. So that's where we are. Welcome to Array Week, everybody. And I'm going to pass things over to you.
Much softer and gentler than Shark Week, too, by the way.
That's true.
Even though everyone loves Shark Week. So today we are going to talk about arrays all day, and strategically starting back at Unit 6. Our approach is really, we're going to level 2, I would say now, maybe level 3, but we're going to at least be on level 2. Course focus, concept-based, syntax emphasis. Please start developing notes. This is going to be an open notes exam. That's the way it's been designed, and therefore you need to have notes to be using. We've got some supports there. So I want to explain to you a little bit of where we're heading from here to May the 1st. And I'm going to use my personal analogy that I use in class every year with what is the AP subset, what does it have to do with Java, and what does it mean when we say AP subset. So I like to tell the class at the beginning of the year that Java is like the Pacific Ocean, largest body of water on Earth, huge, vast, dynamic, changing, growing. This is Java. So imagine that College Board has scooped out with some giant buckets and made a swimming pool full of Pacific Ocean salt water. And from that Java body of water, we have this smaller section of water that's been selected, and that's our swimming pool. And I've given you a little "you are here." So we would all love to be floating in the pool today, probably. And that's the water that we're going to swim in all year. So this is my analogy that I've been using. Well, now that we are to the point where we're 6 weeks out from the AP exam, and we know what Mr. Schultz just went over about the question 1 and the question 2 that you're going to have. The first one will be about array or array list. The second one will be about methods and control structures. We're zeroing in on those topics. In addition to these 4 that you see, we're going to also mix in strings, because the string data object type comes into play in any of these types of questions. You'll see that as we get into that next week. But imagine now that we are in swimming lanes, and this week we're in the array lane, and we're going to be swimming back and forth in that lane. Next week we are going to work on strings a bit, then we're heading to array list, and then we're going to be heading throughout those weeks into methods and control structures. So that's where I want you to see yourself placed for the next little bit. We're going to look first to review a little bit about data types, just to get everybody on the same page. And then what you're designed to learn today is how to create a one-dimensional array of objects, create an array using an initializer list, talk about the error that happens if you try to access array elements that don't exist. And that's going to lead you tomorrow into traversing arrays with Mr. Schultz. So first I want to review from Unit 1 and Unit 2, the array type, the data types that the AP subset includes are primitive types int, double, and boolean, object types, string, and a user-defined class. And we've been working with ArrayList and inheritance for the last 8 days. So that second bullet is going to sound a lot familiar to you from what you've already done. So when you declare an array, if you do not define the data that's in each element of the array, here are the default values. You're going to see this throughout the lesson, so I wanted to go ahead and tell you, if you don't define an int that you have in your array, it's going to be filled with a 0. If your array type is double, you'll get 0.0, and you can see false, and then the object types are going to be null until you actually define what data is in them. All right, so now we're going to switch, and I'm going to show you some things about arrays the way that I do it at school. So here we are. So we're going to have an array, and I'm going to pour out some bottle caps to create our array, because a one-dimensional array is really going to be a list of items, and you could kind of think about them like a spreadsheet, that you have this long strip of cells, but I like bottle caps for doing that. Do I have 8? I have more than 8. So there we go. So I have these bottle caps, and these are going to be our array. And we're going to put things in them. So when we have an array, the first element is going to be called index 0. And then we go forward with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7. So this array has 8 items in it, but they're going to be indexed from 0 to 7. Now there's one problem with my array. If this were Sesame Street, they might ask you, which ones are different? Here are the ones that are different. And that is a big no-no. You can't have difference. All the items in your array have to have exactly the same data type. So I got to have exactly the same bottle cap. So now let's talk about what we might put in this array. We can put a variety of things like you just said. And there are other data types that you can put in your array that are not a part of the Java subset. But one of the types of arrays that are a part of the Java subset would be an int array. So if we're going to fill our array with ints, I'm going to pick numbers that I'm going to put in each slot. They're going to be called elements. We can put any number here. It could be the number 2, even though it's indexed at 2, if this is an int array. So how do we declare an int array? We're going to tell Java that it's an int, and then we're going to use square brackets, because this says I want a 1D array. And then we're going to say what we want to name the array. So the next thing that happens is the array name. So let's just call this array 1. And then we're going to say equals, and we have to instantinate it. So what's our keyword that goes with instantinate? It's new. So we want a new, and what do we want? A new thing. We want a new int array. But what size do we want our array? Because arrays are declared at the time that you create them, and the size cannot be changed. So this would be the program statement to declare an int array that is size 8. And if we don't fill these items, what are they going to be filled with? Hopefully you said 0 in your mind. So now let's look at what we would do if we did a different kind of array. So let's say, and I'm going to have to switch my paper here so I can write, get 2 sheets of paper. We want to make arrays of different types. I'm going to show you several different ways to do them today. And then for homework, I've given you a JDoodle document or source code that you can pull in, and I've got several different kinds. So the other options you can have is we can make a double array, we can make a Boolean array, and we can make a string array. So let's look at the syntax of how that would work. I'm going to move my sheet up here. So this one's going to be the same type of syntax, except it's going to be double. And then we have to tell Java that we want an array. And then let's just call this one array2 equals new. And what is it? It's a double. And if we wanted it to be 8, that's what we would put there. So the same thing here, except this one's going to be a Boolean. And we bring down the data type, and it would have to have a different name. We'll say array3, and it would be Boolean, and you get the drill. And then we'd have string. Remember, it's capitalized because it's a class. And each item that you put in your string, you're going to want to put in quotes. So that's one way to declare an array. And you'll see in the code that I'm going to show you in a little while that after you declare your array, you then have to fill it. And that's part of what you're going to learn tomorrow, is a much faster way to fill an array than what I'm going to show you today. So I got one more example. This is the best example. I have to save the best for last. So remember we talked about when I showed you the slide before we switched, you had the primitive types over here, int, double, Boolean, and then over here we had string, which is a reference object type, and then we had user-defined class. And y'all heard about that for the last 8 days. We had animals, and we had dog classes, and we had hippo classes, and whatever kind of classes you made. So we can also build a one-dimensional array off of a class that someone made. So I was trying to think over the weekend, what do I have here that I can do with? And I thought of a couple of things. So I have a wonderful friend named Carol, and y'all are going to see her dog later on. And a couple of years ago, she made me and our other friend these fun little robot characters with epoxy and, I don't know, some kind of a chip. I don't know what she did. Super cool, though. She made us 2 of these. And so I remembered that I had him because mainly he sits on my desk. Could be a she. So I thought we could have a person class. And in our person class, just keeping it real simple, our person could have a name, and that could be one private instance variable. And then I thought, well, okay, this one doesn't have much more than that. But then I remembered my older son, both my kids have some toys that you all probably have. And one of them has a city scene. And so he has in his room this whole city scene with all of these guys. So I thought, you know, we could build an array with minifigures. So some of these people have accessories. So my other variable that I thought that we could have would be an accessory. And this one could be a string, obviously, data type. And this one could be a Boolean. Do they have an accessory or do they not? So let's look at how this could be. And I've given you code for this so that you can work with it this afternoon or this evening. So let's just say that we're going to let this be our default constructor because we don't have a lot of data on this guy. So in our 0 slot, we're going to put our default person. And I forgot what I named him. Maybe just robot. I can't remember. And accessory, I think I said no. And then in index number 1, element at slot 1, I put Santa. And since he has his bag, he has an accessory. And then we could fill them in any particular order. This is construction worker girl. And see, she has a ponytail, which I love that. And he thinks he's really cool. And the pizza guy. And then I found this one on the floor under my desk. So here is how this would look if we were making an array for the person class. Remember, there's our class, private instance variables. So here's where we're declaring the array. And I just called it array of minis. And I put in here to represent number. We would have 8 if we decided to take him out. We would just have 7. And when you begin to define the actual items at each index, it's a different program statement. And notice what I did here. What's this one going to call? You should know it from last week. This one's going to call the default constructor that I have. And then I have an overloaded constructor that lets me put in, so I could put in here Santa, and it would be true that Santa does have an accessory. And I would have to go through and individually do all these characters. And so I've also taken a picture of the characters. So I want y'all to play with that tonight as you're kind of reflecting on the lesson and going back through it. So let's look at code that goes along with today's topic.
Okay, while you're switching over, I have to say that I am crazy jealous of your new document camera. That was phenomenal. That was so cool.
Well,
oh my gosh.
It went well, partly because shout out to Shrija, my wonderful student who emailed me and said, Miss Westerland, is there anything I can do to help you? And so she let me demo on her today how to swap everything.
That was really great. Cool.
It's great. Thank you. So I have one at school that I use all the time. And that's another thing I do with my journals too, is I'll slap it underneath there. So I might spare y'all that. So here are some facts from the learning objectives, essential knowledge statements, and some studying that I did. A 1D array is a collection of similar type elements. And I really hope that you remember those blue bottle caps and how I had to eliminate the orange and the light blue and the clear. The data type can only be one. You have to make your choice. And it allows us to have one variable represent probably an infinite amount of data because we can just make an array as large as we want it to make. One drawback, disadvantage, is arrays are fixed or static. It's a data structure that once you declare the size, it's not changeable. Elements are indexed beginning with 0, allows primitive or reference data types, can retrieve and sort quickly. And that's what we're going to be learning. This bullet here is our focus really second half of Tuesday, all of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Allows access at any position. And so here's some code. And I've given you two files today. The file that I called array1 has got lots of different types. So what's going to happen here? Take a minute and look at this code. I've declared an array of integers called ARRA, and I've defined it to have 8. And notice that I did a two-step definition and creation. This is fine with Java. It's less common to see. Most people do the one-liner like I showed you with my marker a minute ago. So have I told Java what is going to be at position 0? I have not. So what's going to come out for an integer? Remember back to that first slide, we should be getting a 0 because it's going to put 0 in it. Here's another example where I have the one-liner, declaration, creation. I've defined the size, and I've also now defined my elements, and I'm printing them out one at a time. So you would get what you think you'd get a list. Now we have another way to make arrays. This is called the initializer list. When I declare my array, I want a Boolean array because this triggers Java to say, hey, she wants a one-dimensional array using the square brackets. If you're not familiar with those, the left one is next to P on the keyboard, and the right bracket is just to its right, 2 spaces over from the letter P. I can also define my items at the various indexes using the initializer list. So true is going to be at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So when I call it to tell me what is at position 6, it told me it was false, that false was at 6. What if I call it for 7? What's going to happen? Do I have 7? No. So I'm going to get array index out of bounds exception. This is the error you get when you try to access past what a one-dimensional array holds. You'll get this also with ArrayList too, if you try to go. All right, so here are my people, less the, whatever that was, stormtrooper that I found on the floor just a minute ago. And there's the code. So tonight, maybe you play with this code in JDoodle or in an editor and add more to it. Build out the rest of the people. I only put in default, robot guy, and Santa. But look what I called. I called array mini at position 2, which is 0, 1, 2, guitar guy. What's going to print? Well, first of all, how does it know what to print? I hope you answered in your head, since this is a class, what does a class look to when it's called to print? It looks to the to string. So since I didn't put anything for this element, it's going to fill it with null. So what should happen when we print is we get this. Santa and object guy fill in their information. So you can build the rest of that out. Now I found this in our bit.ly my 2 bits, so keep sending things here. I'm really happy that I stumbled upon this today. Can you please further tell us about Math.random? So I made y'all a notes page today for Math.random. So back before I show you the notes, send us pictures, send us extra research you do, or send us questions. That's a good place for all those things. So I made you a notes page about Math.random. It's just a 1-pager. You can do more and more research about this. We're about to look at Math.random. It comes into this lesson. So copy these over for yourself so that you'll have some samples and do a little research on Math.random. You do have to import from the Lang group. Okay, so here is how to fill an array with Math.random, an array element. You're going to cast it as an int because, let me back up one slide. Notice that when you grab a random number, Java's going to give you a number from 0.0 but less than 1. So it's going to be greater than 0.0 and less than 1. So it's going to be a number you've got to kick out. So the reason that you see always multiply by something is to get it up out of that less than 1 status. And when you add the +1 over here, it changes the range. And there's all kinds of things you can do with that. So I'll go back to this. So when I made this array and I filled elements 0, 1, and 2 with different random numbers, the first two, like this one, is going to be a random number between what? 0 and 10, 0 and 100, and I think I left some triggers for those. But what am I doing with the third one? I want it to give me a random number between the 0 and the length of my array. So this array has a length of 8 with an index of 0 to 7. So that's another way to do it. And I put this in here strategically because we're about to roll right into looking at a free response question that uses this feature. And you can see the output. And you can play with these and get it to continue to throw more and more numbers. And I'm going to show you how to change it so that you don't get 0 as a result. Step out and add for something. Okay, so let's look at Free Response 2013, number 2. And what Mr. Schultz and I have done is we spent some time this weekend, and we're going to be doing this every week all the way till May the 1st, picking free response questions from past exams that relate specifically to the unit and the lessons that we're teaching about that day. And the little system that we brainstormed to use is that in the lesson, you're going to hear about part A, and for your homework, power up, you're going to do part B. And the next day, then we'll go over part B and teach the new lesson, and we'll just kind of follow that pattern at least 4 days out of the week. So we hope that's going to give you a lot of time. So this is 2013, token pass. You may have done some of this with your teacher. I'm going to, for the sake of time, kind of give you a Cliff Notes version. And Mr. Schultz, you step in now if you have comments. It's a game where you have a collection of tokens or coins or something, and they're passed out between all the players. So each player gets a particular number of tokens. And when it's the player's turn, and they've given you example here. So on player two's turn, player two was dealt or given 6 tokens. When it is her turn, I'm gonna let that person be me. I would take one of my tokens and I would give it to the third person, which is gonna increase that person's tokens to 11. And then I'm going to give the next token is I got to give away all my 6 tokens. So I'm going to give one there, and keep passing them out, almost like you're passing out cards. And as those tokens are passed out, these other people get more tokens. So that's the idea of the game. Here is what you're given in the assets for the test question. It's based on a class token pass. The array is a one-dimensional array, and the name of the array you see right here is board. And in part A today, we're going to be looking at working on the player count to count how many tokens I think are distributing the tokens. We'll get to that in just a second. This afternoon or tonight, I want you to work on part B. And I've given you a link in a little bit. You'll see how to get there. So here's part A. Write the constructor for the token pass class. The parameter player count represents the number of players in the game. The constructor should create the board array. So you're really going to write an array for a board that will contain player count elements and fill the array with random numbers. So that's part of why I threw that in earlier. 1 to 10 is our option. So remember that we want to get to 10, but we want to start at 1. So there's a few different ways you can look at the math, at the algorithm structure for that. The constructor should initialize a variable current player to a random number, and then they've given you space to do it. Now, I wanted you to notice I highlighted just about everything that has that Courier new font. Those are clues. Remember we talked about that last week, that when you see that Java-ish font, that should trigger something to you, that those are puzzle pieces to use in your answer. And then you have a whole other, this is one description of the problem. You also have a comment that's a restatement of the same directions, but a different way to read it. Same information. So what we're going to do is I've written down now, I've underlined some things in the second way to look at it. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes and 30 seconds while we listen to this song from Kim Chi. Write your solution to part A. Give it a shot. Look at the pieces of the puzzle and write as much of the solution as you think that you can. Close to 2 minutes. All right, let's look at what you might have done. Did you initialize a board and make it a new? This is a different look than the samples that I showed you. New board, a board variable that is a new integer type array of player count. Did you write a for loop? that goes through all the player count. In your board, did you assign each slot? Because this is part of what you're going to learn tomorrow is to traverse an array. It's filling the board at each index, starting with index 0, with a number between 1 and 10. And remember, I added my +1 out here to this side, but you can definitely do it to the left. And remember, this is casting. So the board is dynamically filled with a number between 1 and 10.
And
And I've kind of shown you the points over there. You
and
get
real quick,
2 points for that one line. Yeah.
Just to avoid us another blooper slide tomorrow, it looks like yours is doing the same thing that mine does when I put together slides. It tries to auto capitalize if you use I as a variable. So when you,
right
look
here,
at the for loop, yeah, that
yes.
capital I should be
Make
a
that a
lowercase
little I.
Mine does that all the time, and it's really frustrating when you
Well,
use.
and I have that on the list for exam prep, is let's work on autocorrect.
Yeah. So this was a perfect example of what you should do when we're doing our exam prep. This,
yes.
You did that on purpose. There you go.
No, I did not, but yeah. I'm so glad you caught it. I didn't even see that.
Well, and I looked at your slides earlier today. I didn't see it either.
Yeah,
so
yeah. But we are worried about that. So we're going to talk to you. I have it on the list of things to think about when we're getting ready for the exam of we got to figure out about cutting off autocorrect. Sometimes we don't need so much help. Does your mom ever help you too much and you think, hush, mom? Because my boys tell me that a lot. We don't need your help. Sometimes we don't need help from these programs. Here's the last point. Part A was a 4-point part. Create a current player variable and let that player also be filled with Math.random from the count of players. So those were the 4 points from part A for this question. And it pretty much falls closely with the concept of what we've gone over today. And I've kind of made an indicator of how many times you're dealing with player count. And that would have come up a lot in the reading of the question. So how'd you do? Hopefully pretty well. Hopefully you got some things written down. All right, wrapping it up. A 1D array is a collection of the same data type elements because they share a contiguous memory location. It's static or fixed. Whatever size you declare it as, that's the size. It's not changeable. Elements are indexed starting with 0. So we call each thing an element, but the index refers to their slot location. So just remember my bottle caps and that we're actually putting something in each, I call them slots, but we're putting items in each element. Can be primitive, can retrieve data faster. And starting today, we're going to give you a CSA exam tip of the day every day. And today's tip is we want you to go to either this long URL. College Board has given some strategies for taking and approaching an open book test, open notes exam, because that's what you're going to be taking. I made a bit.ly, so it'll be a little bit shorter, cb-tips-open. You need to read this. And I'll probably tell you in a couple weeks to read it again, because you need to start now preparing for May the 15th and what kind of test you're going to be taking. So watch for us to have an AP tip of the day every single day. Here are our shared resources. Array 1 and Array 2, the person classes in 2, are shared on JDoodle for you. I've also given them to you in source code format in the today's folder in the Google Drive. Your homework today, and Mr. Schultz is going to pick up here and finish us out.
All right. So homework to kind of start prepping a little bit for tomorrow. As always, we want you to look at the lesson resources from the CED. So again, go back and look at some of the resources that are available from Runestone, from Practice It, and from Coding Bat. Under lesson reflection, now like Mrs. Westerland said, we're kind of stepping things up a notch because now we are in full exam prep mode. So the power-ups are going to be a little more powered up, okay? So for lesson reflection, we want you to handwrite code to go through and try a couple of the different things. Declare, then fill an array of string values. Declare, then fill an array of 10 int values filled with random numbers. Declare and fill an array of 10 double values based on the temperatures in your town over the past 5 days. So try some of those, because again, we want you to get into the habit of being able to handwrite code when you aren't totally reliant on the compiler to help you out, okay? For the lesson implementation, Mrs. Westerland took you through the free response question from the 2013 exam, number 2, part A. So for your power up, take a look at free response question let me say that again. Take a look at the free response question from 2013. Look at question number 2 and try part B. See if you can wrap that one up, and you can even go out and there's a link provided that'll take you to the free response questions, the solutions, and the commentary. And then finally, the last piece, as Mrs. Westerland already said, go out and take some time and read the tips from College Board on open book, open note exams. It kind of makes sense, since they are the ones offering the exam and they know it's going to be open book, open note. It would probably be a good idea to look at their tips specifically for treating their open book, open note exam. So that would be some good information to have. All right, here's our CSA show and share for today. We love hearing from the students that are in our virtual classroom. And so as always, we look forward to seeing pictures of your pets. We have an adorable cat from Gwendolyn in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're looking at Gizmo from Mrs. Yarborough's class at the Alabama School of Fine Arts. We have Kepler that's showing us that we need to stay safe and wear a mask, and I do love the mask. And then we have Dennis's pup from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So thank you all for sharing all of that with us. As we said last week, we wanted to make sure that we pointed out, for those of you that are also taking AP Computer Science Principles, or if you have a friend that's taking AP Computer Science Principles, there are new resources available for students in AP Computer Science Principles. You are welcome and encouraged to join Mr. Bonarigo and Mrs. Alano's CSP video lessons to review the performance task guidelines and revisit some key content. So make sure you check those out, or if you have a friend that you know is in AP Computer Science Principles, clue them in and let them know that those videos are there. If you are in a situation right now with our current stay-at-home order, that you have an issue getting access to the internet or to a device, College Board wants to help you. Okay, College Board wants to make sure that everyone has the tools that they need and the access that they need to be able to be successful on this upcoming exam. So if you are in that situation, or if you know of anyone that's in that situation, please reach out and let College Board know at cb.org/tech. And that's it for today. Again, I wanted to tell you how jealous I am of that document camera. That was phenomenal. I love that. You
can borrow it anytime. I'll just ship it right on up there to Ohio.
Just run it right on up here to Dayton, Ohio. So, okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Please be sure to join us tomorrow, and we'll look at traversing.
And you won't have to fill them one by one. He's going to teach you how to let the computer do the work.
Oh yeah, definitely.
To fill the array.
Yeah. So,
see you tomorrow.
Bye everybody. Have a great day.